Farmweek is a production of the Mississippi State University Extension Service.
Today on Farm Week, it's harvest time. Fortunately, no one was seriously injured when a truckload of corn was struck by a train at Tchula, Mississippi.
Beefing up the Bulldogs, Mississippi State University's football team meets the state's beef industry. Everyone had a great steak, had some fun, and they learned about Mississippi agriculture.
In southern gardening, garden walls. Don't view them simply as barriers. They can be an asset to the landscape.
In the markets, the pace of U.S. cotton exports is running behind, while milk producers may be able to hang on to break-even prices at the farm gate.
In the feature segment, passing on the family farm to the next generation. You'll meet one family that's going about it in their own way.
We probably both have a quick trigger, but things never last very long between us. It's done and over, and then we go on and get the job done. So that's probably not the way you would have someone write it out on a piece of paper for you to do this, but I think it's going to work for us.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leighton Spann.
And I'm Artis Ford. Welcome to Farm Week.
Mississippi's harvest season is underway, but there was a reminder this week that safety must be practiced on the road as well as at the field.
Leighton, the accident occurred on Tuesday near Tchula in the Mississippi Delta. Fortunately, no one seemed to be seriously injured as a semi-truck hauling corn was hit by an Amtrak train. The Associated Press reports the accident occurred about 9:30 a.m. on Tuesday. The grain truck was struck by Amtrak's City of New Orleans train as it headed south to New Orleans. The accident occurred where Dawson Road crosses the track and intersects with Highway 49 East just south of Tchula. An Amtrak official said the train carried 152 passengers and 11 crew members. There were no reports of serious injuries, but at least one train crew member and one train passenger were taken to the hospital at Greenwood. The accident occurred at a marked public crossing. The train appears to have struck the grain trailer, cutting it in two. The train did not derail, but it was damaged enough that the passengers had to continue their journey by bus. The accident is still under investigation. And Leighton, while this involved a train, we have to keep in mind that those of us who are just simply driving on the highway this time of year, there are grain trucks, but there are also combines, there are tractors. Combines and tractors are never going fast. Always slow down when you see them.
Thanks, Artis. Well, at the third annual Beefing Up the Bulldogs, members of the Mississippi State University football team put down their helmets and football gear to get a glimpse of the agricultural side of MSU. They were treated to a steak dinner provided by the Mississippi Cattlemen's Association. The players spoke with ag industry professionals and even participated in some fun farming activities. Farm Week's Amy Taylor reports.
You wouldn't expect to see members of the Mississippi State University football team milking cows and tossing hay bales, but at Beefing Up the Bulldogs, the athletes got to see what fun on the farm is like. Larry Jeffcoat with Mississippi Beef Council explains the purpose of this event.
The event today is promoting beef. We show our appreciation to the people at Mississippi State for what they do to help us, it being a land-grant college. The Extension Service works with us real close. The Animal and Dairy Science Department works with us close. We like to show our appreciation and promote beef any way we can. Additionally,
First South Farm Credit helped sponsor the event. All the members of the team and the coaches were treated to a steak dinner as well as MSU ice cream. Some of the players had never been face-to-face with a live cow before this event.
They're going to throw the hay bales today and they're going to milk the cow, have an opportunity to see the cow milked and participate in milking the cow and see where the milk comes from.
How do you think they're going to feel about that?
Oh, they enjoy it. We did this 2 years before and they really enjoy it, get a kick out of it.
Look at my girl, man.
You know, they never saw that before, never been near a cow. Some of them had never touched a cow, but they enjoy being around it, and the throwing the hay bales is another activity that they like.
This was the third annual Beefing Up the Bulldogs event, which took place at the brand new Leo Seal Jr. Football Complex. From Mississippi State University, I'm Amy Taylor reporting.
Well, as we're getting into mid-September, let's check the Mississippi Weekly Crop Report from the Mississippi Ag Statistics Service in Jackson. This reflects conditions as of last Sunday, September 8th. So that does not include the rain that has fallen this week. So half the state, though, short to very short soil moisture. In terms of Mississippi corn, 60% of the crop harvested, 17 points behind average. Mississippi soybeans, 19% of the crop dropping leaves. The average is 54% for the state. Mississippi cotton, only 25% of the crop has open bolls. The average is 66% for the state. Mississippi rice, only 9% of the crop harvested as of September the 8th. 41% is what should be for the state. Mississippi peanuts, 6% of the crops harvested, and that is actually a little ahead of the average for this state. Mississippi sweet potatoes, only 6% of the crop harvested. Normally it's 13% for this time. Garden walls can do more than provide privacy and separation. They can create landscape interest. In this week's Southern Gardening segment, Extension horticulturist Dr. Gary Bachman has a few ideas on how you can make garden walls an important part of your landscape.
Garden walls are more than just barriers. They create a backdrop for our landscape plantings and can be an integral part of the garden. Today I'm at a friend's to share ideas how they utilize garden walls in the landscape. The outside wall is brick and is composed of different levels and a conventional landscape. The plantings around the lower wall consist of white flowering vinca and butterfly penta. A favorite landscape plant of mine is agapanthus, commonly called lily of the Nile. These plants produce clumps of shiny, strap-like foliage with the flower clusters displayed on tall stems. The flowers are grouped in structures called umbels, and each individual flower resembles a garden lily. The seed heads create landscape interest and, in my opinion, are as attractive as the flowers. The taller section of the outside wall has white flowering Natchez crepe myrtles and ligustrum along its length. When you approach the iron gate to the backyard, you notice the garden walls are covered with creeping fig. I find it interesting that the plant attaches to the brick using a natural adhesive. The plantings in the backyard are dominated by the banana and red tropical hibiscus. The tropical hibiscus flowers are striking with their trumpet shape and bottle brush-like arrangement of pistil and stamen. Adding color to the landscape are mixed powder blue plumbago and orange-red crocosmia. Garden walls create interest and can surprise visitors when you include different styles of plant selection on the inside and the outside. I'm horticulturist Gary Bachman for Southern Gardening.
Gary had to handle some multi-syllable names in that story.
There's some tough ones.
Leighton Gary says, treat garden walls like you would any other landscape. There are many different types and textures. We know this. So look around your area or the web. You're bound to find some wall ideas that you can adapt to your landscape. In the feature segment today, passing on the family farm to the next generation. It takes planning and an acknowledgement that it will require change. Time now for the markets with Leighton. You say we have another sign of some health in the ag sector. U.S.
tractor sales were up in the month of August. More on that here in a few minutes. Also looking at the markets this week, Brazil is planting more soybeans, making for more competition. The U.S. beef cow herd could grow 2% in 2014, while export business is supporting the U.S. dairy sector. We are producing this edition just ahead of the release of the September 12th USDA reports. The average pre-report trade guess for the World Ag Supply and Demand estimates as far as U.S. corn, U.S. production of 13.6 billion bushels with an average yield of 153.6 bushels per acre. And as far as U.S. soybeans, the average trade guess is a harvest of 3.14 billion bushels with an average yield of 41.1 bushels per acre. Analyst John Roach expects further reductions in the size of the U.S. soybean crop as the weeks roll on. He notes that chief U.S. competitor Brazil is planting more soybeans than ever right now.
South American currency values are cheap. The producers there are not able to make any money on corn at these values. They're going to plant a lot of beans. Estimates are 6% more beans in Brazil, maybe even as much as 8% more beans in Brazil. So there's going to be a lot of competition in the southern hemisphere. Their crop, where they're going to need to raise a big crop, we're going to need it. So we'll have chances for weather scares. So the bean market overall has turned into a rather positive situation because of these weather conditions.
Cotton futures were hovering in their recent trading range Thursday morning ahead of the government's updated supply-demand estimates. Some analysts think this market will need some positive news from China, India, or other major consumers in order to maintain prices above 82 cents. Extension Ag economist John Michael Riley discussed cotton with me this week. John Michael, what are cotton prices doing just ahead of the new reports?
Well, the nearby October contract up pretty strong, about $1.20 right before we went on air. The December contract not up quite as strong, but all contracts are up today. That tells me the market is looking for some bullish news coming out of the reports today.
Which could mean crop conditions declining overall.
We have seen crop conditions decline just a little bit. They're at 45% good and excellent right now. That leaves a lot in the poor and very poor conditions. Texas is the dominant state that is in the poor condition range. So very much so, and that's where the bulk of the crop is. Over half the acres are there. So that's why we're really keying in on the poor conditions and the potential yield loss as a result.
All right, we have found out that the weekly exports or export sales in general are lagging for cotton. What's that trend mean?
Well, we have seen the dollar increase throughout the whole year. It's been up and down a little bit lately, but more up days than down days. Importers are jumping on those days when the dollar is down, trying to capture some exchange currency favors there. But for the most part, the dollar has been strengthening throughout the year, and that is never good for exports. And we have seen exports lag behind where we were at a year ago. Which in broad terms means China, India, other major importers are not buying U.S. cotton right now. That is exactly what we're seeing. That's where our exports are still going. They're just not going there at the rate that we'd like to see. So what kind of outlook do you see for this market without having seen these latest numbers yet? Well, knowing that the crop is in poor condition, acres are down very much so compared to last year. So all of these are, why we've seen prices not dip below 70 cents really this whole year. If the conditions continue to decline and if yield suffers in today's report, we're going to see some strong prices. Rains in Texas, it's this time of the year, it's really too late. Exports are really what we're going to be keying on because that's what we don't know with respect to the future. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of wait and see at this point in the year. Unfortunately, yes, but yeah, more information will become available very soon. September is National Honey Month, so this week's honey is the subject of our trivia quiz. Our question, what types of honeybees are found in a hive? Is the answer queen, drones, workers, or all of the above? I'll tell you at the end of the markets.
We're going to pause for a short break on Farm Week. Coming up, we'll look at the calendar and the rest of the markets. Leighton Spann reports farmers are rebuilding the nation's beef herd and dairy exports are up. In the figure segment today, passing on the family farm is the goal of many, but how to do it confuses most.
Each year, many Mississippians are seriously injured or killed in farm tractor accidents. Transporting and lifting objects with a front loader requires extreme caution. Unsecured objects can roll or slide down the loader arms and injure the driver. To help prevent injuries, tractors should be equipped with a falling objects protection system. Always secure loads or use a bale spear or straps before lifting objects. A message from the Mississippi State University Extension Service.
Before we get back to the markets, let's look at the Farm Week calendar. A workshop on managing wild pig damage will take place Wednesday, September 18th in Meridian. The location is the East Mississippi Electric Power Association Auditorium. That's on Highway 39. The cost is $20 including lunch, but you do need to register by September 16th. You can do that by mail or go to our calendar for an online link. A workshop will take place starting September 24th on helping Mississippi's farm and ranch women to plan the transfer of their operations from one generation to the next. The workshops will be held 5 consecutive Tuesday evenings starting September 24th. The cost is $25, which will include a light supper each week. The hours are 5:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. It will be offered at 4 locations: Collins, Indianola, Raymond, and Starkville. For more information, contact your county extension service office or look on the Farm Week website calendar and Facebook page. Go to our Farm Week webpage at farmweek.msucares.com for information on these and other events. Now check out this week's Farm Week Snapshot.
An Oklahoma Extension economist believes an increase of 2% in the size of the U.S. beef cow herd is possible next year. Darrell Peel at Oklahoma State University says that an additional 2 to 3% growth could take place in the following year of 2015. Now, as for the present, Peel describes the latter half of this year, 2013, as a period of herd stabilization in the United States with little or no growth taking place. U.S. milk exports are up, and this factor has been supporting the U.S. dairy sector. All of this according to analyst Naomi Bloom. She describes what's been happening in the milk market and what the outlook may be.
Production levels are up 1.1% from a year ago, and that makes sense because the drought really hit production hard last year. So normally when you have a 1% increase in production on milk, that's something that can make the market fall a lot lower. The reason that we're not is because our dairy exports overall are up 13%, and that's what's really supporting the market. With also this week, when the soybeans have gone higher, that's also helped support the milk prices to go higher as well. And just a reminder for those at home who aren't maybe familiar with the dairy industry, break even now for these guys is $17 to $18. It's really shocking when you stop to think about it. So if we can keep prices between 17 and 19, at least that keeps things afloat.
The Association of Equipment Manufacturers says U.S. tractors are selling well these days. The August sales of two-wheel drive units were up 13.6% compared to 1 year ago, while sales of four-wheel drive tractors increased 2.3%. The trade association notes that the biggest percentage increase in sales for the month and year to date has been in two-wheel drive tractors with 100 horsepower or more. Well, before our feature story, let's look at the trivia answer for this week. The correct choice is D. In a beehive, you will find queen, drone, and worker bees.
Many farm parents are proud of the day when a son or daughter announces they want to eventually take over the family operation. Most family farms, however, have a difficult time figuring out how to make that happen. For example, will the son or daughter buy the farm because the parents probably need the money for their retirement? Also, how is this to be accomplished fairly when there are non-farming siblings involved? These questions are so difficult, many families put off making transition plans. DeMarcus Mike Tobias introduces us to a Nebraska family farm that's in transition for better or worse.
Hang on a minute. What do we got in here?
It was the summer of 2000. Kelly and Riley Skurdlant had a lot on their minds. At this moment, whether a skunk was hiding inside irrigation pipe. But long term, they were both thinking about the future of the Skurdlant family farm.
Come on, Mischief!
Riley was 18, fresh out of high school with a passion for working with cattle and desire to do something different than most of his classmates. That's stay in agriculture.
A lot of people tell you if they could sit in an office and make money, they would, but I'd rather work from sun up to sundown for it and sweat it out. Come on, girl.
Kelly, Riley's dad, wanted this to happen, just like he took over the farm from his father. But Kelly had concerns. Running a farm was getting expensive. Fuel, fertilizer, and equipment costs were going up.
I think you'd make a very good farmer, but it's tougher and tougher all the time for these young guys.
There was a lot of uncertainty for Riley and the Skurdlant farm. Flash forward 13 years. Riley is farming with his dad. After high school, he took community college classes and had a series of full-time jobs, all ag-related, most fairly close to home. Most recently, he was working with a fertilizer plant in Bladen. In one way or another, he also stayed involved with the farm, gradually starting to make more management decisions, especially involving livestock. The Skirtlant family farm became his full-time job at the beginning of 2013, taking a role he describes as primary operator and secondary manager.
Dad finally decided he was getting too old to do a lot of it and wanted to slow down just a little bit. So I think the last couple of years I've been planting a lot for him, and a lot of hours at night after I'd worked all day over there, I'd come home, plant half the night for him, and I think he could see it was kind of getting worn down on me and my family and everyone else. So I think it was time that we did something different.
Certainly having him back on the farm, really, literally back on the farm, is a big difference. And although we are at times in conflict about management, and probably not as much conflict as he thinks, but it's just amazing to have him here.
Kelly, in his early 60s, calls this an evolution of the Skirtlant farm, similar to the way he took over the operation from his father. It's a typical way farms change hands, and the typical way young people enter agriculture.
Without a parent or a child relationship, or a grandparent or an uncle or a neighbor or someone to help get going, it's really difficult to jump into this. So I would be more than...
Geller's been helping young farmers get started for several decades, a time during which there's been a trend toward fewer young people entering agriculture. In 1982, 38% of principal farm operators had less than 10 years experience. By 2007, that number was down to 26%. But Geller has a feeling that trend may be changing.
I have a hunch that we will see an increase, or at least a stabilizing of the younger people coming back in. I think a lot of it has to do with the economics of the whole situation, or especially in the crop side of things. Profits have really returned to agriculture in a way that they haven't in the last 30 or 40 years.
I think in this area there are probably more younger guys Riley's age, in that 30 to 35 range, that are staying in ag.
That's just an amendment. It can be an amendment to the lease. You just add it on to what you have.
At a workshop for beginning farmers and ranchers, Angie Miller is talking about leasing pasture land. With rapidly rising ag land values, access to land is one of the big barriers for beginning farmers. Miller, an attorney who works with a beginning farmer program, says that's why it's important to have programs that help.
Nebraska is the first state to pioneer what's called our beginning farmer tax credit, which allows for a beginning farmer to have a 3-year lease with an established producer generally. The established producer gets a 3-year tax credit. The beginning farmer gets a 3-year lease and a foot in the door.
When I started farming, the thing to do was you go out and buy some ground. You buy the land and maybe share some machinery for a while, and maybe rent a quarter or two of ground to go with that. Today, that buy the land thing looks like it's coming 5, 10, 15 years down the road before they're able to generate enough capital to come up with that down payment so they can cash flow that land purchase.
Land isn't an issue for Riley Skirtlant. The family has about 1,800 acres. That's large for a family farm in the United States. Here, they grow corn, soybeans, and wheat, and run about 150 head of cattle. Now, the challenge is the transition, or evolution, as Kelly Skirtlant calls it.
I think it's the lack of communication that really is when we see transitions begin to fail.
Whether you're family relation, or even if you aren't family related, you need to figure out a way to talk about a lot of things. Expectations in the generations tend to be quite a bit different.
Transitions can be formal or informal. The latter, common in family operations, would probably best describe how Riley and Kelly are doing business.
There's a lot of old ways of thinking and new ways of thinking kind of coming together that don't really like to agree a lot of times.
When you work together in this kind of an operation, I think you're going to have differences.
We're both not the best of communicators. It's going to be kind of fly by our seat of our pants, I think, really. But it's probably the most wrong plan you could have in place, but that's kind of the way we're going to go with it, I think.
We probably both have a quick trigger, but things never last very long between us. it's done and over, and then we go on and get the job done. So that's probably not the way you would have someone write it out on a piece of paper for you to do this, but I think it's going to work for us.
For Market to Market, I'm Mike Tobias.
And you can watch this story again on our Farm Week website. That's farmweek.msucares.com. You can also watch Farm Week stories on YouTube and Facebook. We'll also have a link to the Market to Market website where you can see the story as well as read the script. That's farmweek.msucares.com. Well, we are at the end of Farm Week for this week. On our next show, raised beds.
We'll be traveling to Forest and Lamar counties in Mississippi, where this form of gardening is catching on fast. You can find them everywhere, from backyards to assisted living facilities to children's programs. They can sit on the ground or be raised to wheelchair or standing height.
We'll also take you to Mississippi State University's ever-popular Muscadine Field Day at Poplarville.
And in southern gardening, the perfect patio. See how this New Orleans-style garden came together.
For the rest of the Farm Week crew, I'm Artis Ford.
I'm Leighton Spann. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.